Okay, we'll start with the second chapter, that's called file handling. So before we'll start with the text files and binary file, we'll just understand what is a file. So what is a file? I think so far what you have understood is you know how to store your details. For example, you know, like I just want to store the student details. For example, name of the student I wanted to store, and then the combination, and then the, you know, like which class you are in, and then the percentage or something like that I want to store it. And then that means you can just have a list or a dictionary or tuple and you can store this information. Okay, you've stored your details. Let's consider Radha. Let's consider combination PCMC, and then class is second PUC and percentage is 98%. Now similarly I want to store some 50 student details like that. I want to store all these informations permanently. I don't want you to write the code, execute it, watch it, and again if you want to see it, again you write it and then you store it again. No, I don't want like that. I wanted once I write the program, once I, you know, give the instructions, you know, give my details, it has to be stored permanently. Permanently means what, students? That means whatever the details, it has to be stored in the secondary memory. Store the details in the secondary memory. So how to do it? Very simple, make use of the file concept. So what is a file? File is basically a named area in the secondary memory. Named area in the secondary memory where we can store the data and retrieve it for the future purpose. That's what you mean by file. Okay, so we'll just understand what are the two types of files. We have a text files and we have a binary files. So what are the two types of files? A text files basically stores the information in terms of ASCII characters. Okay, you have to remember here, in case of binary files, it's going to be in terms of binary only, zeros and ones only. Okay, so it can be in terms of images, audios, videos, or so on. And similarly, we have each line is terminated by an AOL. That means slash in character. It can be anything. Apart from this, it can be slash T or slash N or anything it can be. There should be a separate slash in after every line. But there is no such delimiter here in the binary file. Okay, and it's easy to understand, right? It's going to be easy to understand. It's human readable. It's difficult to understand because it's everything in terms of zeros and ones. It's difficult to understand. An extension we have .txt, .py, .csv. Okay, and then we have .dat, mp3, images. These are the examples for the binary files. So we need a character translation. Translation is required because the way we have written and the way it is stored in the memory, definitely it is differing. So here in case of binary file, there is no translation required as such. Okay, we'll go for the methods in file handling. What are the different methods in file handling? So in case of the functions that are methods are basically the functions only. Before we understand the syntax and example, we'll just go through with the meaning of all those functions. So what is an open function? Basically opens a file if it's already there. If it is not there, it is going to create a new file. Not there, it creates a new file. And close function is basically releases the memory. Whenever we open a file, there is always a file object associated with that. It's going to release that object. Okay, it's going to release that object. It's going to free the memory. That's what the meaning of it. Releases the space that is allocated for the file object. Similarly, we have a read function. It reads a specified number of bytes. It reads a specified number of bytes. And similarly here, read line, it basically reads one complete line from the file. Okay, up to the new line character. It can also read a specific number of bytes. Read line can be a specific number of bytes and up to slash and also one single line also it can read. Is the point clear? And similarly here, read lines is going to read all the lines. Output for this is going to be what? Strings only. Read and read line is going to be string only. Read line function, it basically returns as a list of string. It returns a list. Returns as a list. Reads all the lines and return them as a list of strings, which where each ends up with a new line character. Keep that in the mind. Okay, if you give the argument as negative for read or read line, or it's going to be in terms of no arguments only, then complete file will be read. That's the difference. Okay, we have write and write lines function. It basically writes a single string to the text file, writes a multiple strings at once. I know, okay, you can write multiple lines to a text file at one shot. then I have to have multiple strings. No, how to store multiple strings? Multiple strings you have to store it in means you need to have some kind of iterable objects like what? List, tuple. So you can store multiple strings in the form of list or tuple in terms of iterable objects where we can store multiple strings in the text file using a function called writeLines. We have a tell function. I told you an open function will always give the object, file object it gives. The file object basically will be pointing every time. When you read one character, it just incremented by 1. If you write one character, it gets incremented by 1. So this tell function basically it gives an integer representing where exactly the file object is there in the file. So we have a file here. See, what is a file? File is basically a named area in the secondary memory. In the second, there is a secondary memory. So we have a file here. So I have just written here. Okay. So it just gives you. So right now my file pointer is here. So it gives you the integer, returns an integer where exactly the file pointer is pointing to in the file. Can you move the file pointer according to your need? Definitely you can move the file object according to your desired location, making use of a seek function. Making use of seek function, you can take the file object wherever you want it. Similarly, we have a dump function and we have a load function. It's basically used for serializing and for deserializing. Okay, this will be covered in the coming slides because little bit extra information I need to give before I tell you what is dump and what is load. Okay, we'll go further with open clause. Open function basically a function that opens a file. Okay, if the file is not there, it's going to create one new file. Whereas with open function is basically a clause wherein the file gets automatically closed when it comes out of the block. Okay, so what I can write is, I think it's there in the previous slide only, you can just check it here. See here, you can just check here with open. Okay, name of the file and we have the file mode here as my object is a file object. Automatically this is the block. When it comes out of the block, that means that the control comes here, automatically the file will be closed. No need to explicitly close the file. That is the difference. No need to close the file explicitly. That is the difference. Clear? Yeah. So we'll go for this now. So what are the different methods? Whatever we have seen, we'll just see with the syntax and then the example here. Open function will always give you the file object. Is the file object. Is the file object. And here we have an example, sample.txt R. R is a file mode. Okay, so we have a close function. Any function, very simple students, any function you should always open any file related function with respect to the file object. Okay, apart from that serializing and deserializing, dump and load, remember rest of all the functions starting from the close function. Okay, starting from that till the seek function, you can just see here everything we're going to use it, or we're going to use that particular function making use of file object only. File object dot close function, file object dot read function, file object dot read line function, file object dot read lines function, file object dot write lines, tell, seek, like this. Remember, I told you seek is basically a function that's going to give you wherever you want to move the file object, you'll be able to move it. From where you want to move, is it from the beginning, is it from the current, is it from the end, exactly. That reference point is given in terms of reference point here. This reference point can be 0, 1 or 2. It can be 0, 1 or 2. It can be 0 means it's from the beginning, it can be from the current position or from the end. Okay, the corresponding example are here, there, close, read lines function, read lines. All the lines will be read here. And f.write Python one string, multiple strings using iterable objects like list here. Tell function returns an integer here, 5, 0. From the beginning, 5 bytes it will be moved. Okay, that is what an seek function does. Okay, so we'll come back to this dump and load. Okay, we'll just go for this now. So we have a file open modes. What are the different file open modes we have? Okay, so we have different file modes here called R, and R, let's basically discuss the main important, okay. R is there, W is there, and A is there, and that's all repeated. R is for what? It's for the read mode. And what is W? It's for the write mode. And what is A? A is for the append mode. So whenever plus is there, it means both read and write. So if I write R plus R plus R or R plus, it can be, sorry, it can be R plus, it means to say read write both. Plus W or W plus, it's read write both. B indicates it's binary, as simple as that. R is for reading, W is for writing, A for appending. If you have plus, means it's both read write, and what is B? B for is binary, just remember that. And what is file offset position? Okay, whenever you open a file, what happens? Okay, there is a file object associated with that particular file. Okay, it gives you that particular file object. Where exactly that file object, the position of the file object is indicated by this file offset position. You read it, you want to read a particular file, that means to say that is the default file mode that we will be having. Default mode, as soon as you open a file without giving any mode means what? It will be in the read mode only. Okay, so in the read mode it will be beginning of the file. In all other modes, whether it is going to be W, whether it is going to be R or R plus, or it can be W plus or plus W, whatever it is always that the file object will be pointing at the beginning of the file only. Beginning of the file only. Then what about A for the append mode? That means here the data gets appended at the end. For example, I've written hi. Let's write hi. So hi, I have to write friends here. That means whatever the string I want to write, I've already opened a file, I have written hi there. I want to add on friends word now for this already opened file. That means I have to open this file in the append mode only, not in the write mode. If you open this file in the write mode, what will happen? It is going to overwrite. Then that means what happens? This hi will not be there. It just comes as friends. It will be overwritten. If you want to add on the content for the file, what is there? That means you have to open the file in the append mode. That is very, very important. If you open in the write mode, anyway I want to write it. If you open in the write mode, it will go off. It overrides the content that you keep in the mind. Clear? So we'll just go for the next content. That is called pickle. Okay, well, yeah, that's the topic I wanted to do. So far, you know how to store a variable in the memory? Very simple, ma'am. What is there? Just declare one variable called equal to 10. How to store this in the secondary memory? Ma'am, what I know, I can store it everywhere. Word also and Excel also. Not like that. I want to store. How do we store? See, what is this? This is basically a variable. Whether it is any kind, whether it is a list, whether it is a tuple, whether it is a dictionary, whether it is an integer, whether it is a float, whether it is a string, anything in Python will be considered as objects. So this object, if we have to store as it is in the secondary memory, if you want to store these objects in the secondary memory, how to do it? That's what we learned. We have two files, text files and binary files. But if I store all these things in terms of text, for example, I'm going to write it as L is equals to 10, 20, 30 I have written, and if I store this in the form of text, how will I be able to retrieve what is L of 0? I'll not be able to retrieve because everything is in the form of text, no? I'll not be able to retrieve it. Now, I want to retrieve it, a particular value here means this should be stored as an object itself without a text. I don't want to store it as a text. It has to be stored in the form of text only without reformatting the structure, without losing the structure, without losing its hierarchy. Then how to do it? We need to have a special module for that. How to store the objects in the memory. not as a text file. How to store objects as it is in the memory and retrieve it as it is as an object only without losing its structure hierarchy can be done using a technique or using a module called pickle module. Using a module called pickle module. Using a module called pickle module. So how you can do it? So pickle module basically it has two functions, dump function and load function. Using this function you will be able to do it. So let's understand now. So here there is some two terminologies we'll understand. There is something called serialization and we have a deserialization. What is serialization? Serialization basically helps in converting the Python objects into byte streams so that I can store it in the binary file. What is it? I told you. What is serialization? Serialization is a method. It's basically that's a process that helps in transforming the Python objects into byte stream, because binary files should be in terms of byte streams only, zeros and ones only. That is done a technique called, that process is called serialization. Okay, this process is called serialization, but how do we literally do it? How will I convert my Python objects into byte streams and have to store it in a binary file? To do it, there is a function called dump function. There is a function called dump function. Can I use the function just like that? Definitely not, because this function belongs to a module called pickle module. Then how do you use that function? Pickle.dump function. What are you dumping? You're dumping an object. Which object? Let's consider I'm dumping here. Okay, where I'm dumping? Into the file? No. Which file? Which file? File object. You would have written file object. Is the point clear? So what I'm trying to tell you, a pickle is basically a module that helps you to store the byte objects, store the Python objects into the memory, into the secondary memory, and helps you to retrieve it using a two process called serialization and deserialization. Serialization is also called as pickling and deserialization is also called as an unpickling. What is serialization is done through a process called dump function, and deserialization what? Deserialization means basically it's an unpickling process. It's the reverse of pickling, I can tell you. That means what? That means it basically converts the byte streams. Whatever is there in the byte streams, I have to get back my object. Object will convert into byte stream, that will become pickling. From byte streams, I want my object back. That is called deserialization or unpickling. And how do we do it? I have to get my object back now. That means I have to load it. Load it. How will you call the function? Load function. Very simple. Pickle.load function. Pickle.load function. Load from where? Using object only, no? File object. And it is giving you an object only. Let's consider it as going to be a list. It returns that list. Is the point clear? That's what I was telling you. Let's go back now. So I was just telling you dump used for serializing, pickling, writing Python objects into binary file. Load used for deserialization, unpickling, and reading Python objects from the binary file. Pickle.dump object. What are you dumping? Where are you dumping? What are you dumping? Where are you dumping? Data object, file object. Next we have load function. Load function, remember, it always gives you an object. Object. Okay, I can write it as an object here. Okay, object is equal to pickle.load. It will return. You have to receive, no? If it's loading means you have to receive that, no? That's very important.